Good evening. My name's Steve. I am a Christian, libertarian, anarchist, voluntarist, what have you, who for some reason feels like streaming once a week on Sunday evening. And tonight, we're going to talk about an amazing clip that Conman extraordinaire Jesse Duplantis posted himself. I'm telling you, it's the funniest thing. Misquoting scripture. Wildly misquoting scripture. And then I also wanted to talk about the menthol cigarette ban that was delayed by the FDA or the Biden administration, whatever. Two totally different topics, but just something I felt like talking about. So that's what we're going to dive into tonight. Let me make sure my audio's good. All right, yep. So, but before we dive into those stories, of course, I have a couple funny clips that I find humorous. You may as well. We all know what's going on the college campuses. There are protests galore about Israel, Palestine, and that never-ending conflict that I, honest to God, don't know much about. This is a 1,000-year history, 2,000-year plus feud going on, and it's a very complicated situation, in my opinion. I'll just state for the record, I don't want people to die, and I wish there were no violence, and whatever solution gets that result, I would love, right? However, these protests are getting crazy. I mean, look, they're setting up tents everywhere, camping out, causing all sorts of issues. But I saw this clip and I was dying laughing of this is exactly what tent manufacturers are doing right now. You got to watch this. This little kid. That little look. Just counting all the money they're making. He's flipping through $100 bills. Look at the little glance he makes. Okay, I'm sorry. This little Jewish kid counting his money. Oh, shoot. It cracks me up every time I see it. But anyways, yeah. There are certainly people cashing in on the sudden urge to pop up a tent all throughout the country on college campuses. And it is an interesting phenomenon. I don't even want to dive into that too much just because, honestly, I don't know enough about the history to know what's going on. What I will say is the Israeli government is probably wildly out of control, maybe in some ways justifiably so, but when they start killing innocent people is where I have a major problem with it. So I have some sympathy for the protesters, but I would say a lot of those protesters are advocating for things that I would not agree with. Anyways, let's move on here. We got Biden. This was maybe a couple weeks ago, probably on the campaign trail somewhere or doing some speech somewhere, but listen to this.
In a sense, I don't know why we're surprised by Trump. How many times does he have to prove we can't be trusted?
How many times does he have to prove we can't be trusted?
In a sense, I don't know why we're surprised by Trump. How many times does he have to prove we can't be trusted?
And his little face, he's like, huh? That's a good point, huh? He will read anything on the teleprompter, as I showed last week, where he read the word pause when he was supposed to pause. I mean, I don't think this guy's going to be around in 4 years, let alone be president for 4 years. I mean, his decline is happening rapidly. Anyways, before I get to the Jesse Duplantis thing, let's talk about menthol cigarettes. Why? Because I think it's interesting. So for years, the FDA has been wanting to ban via a lot of pressure from various groups and organizations trying to ban tobacco and cigarettes in general. But they figure, they start chipping away. They did flavored cigarettes and all this stuff. And now there's only, I guess, as far as I know, tobacco, regular old tobacco flavor, and then a menthol flavor. And they figure, well, hey, the next step is to ban menthol cigarettes. So I have a couple articles here. This one's from NPR, and they're saying, the cloudy future. They're just talking about the delay of the ban. They say in the U.S., flavored cigarettes have been banned since 2009. See, so they banned flavored ones. With one glaring exception, menthols. That exception was supposed to go away in 2023, but the Biden administration quietly delayed the ban on menthols. Why? Well, an estimated 85% of black smokers smoke menthols. And some potentially suspect polls have indicated that a ban on menthols would chill Biden's support among black people. Of course, it's more complicated than that, they say. The story of menthol cigarettes is tied up in policing, advertising, influencer culture, and the weaponization of race and gender studies. I mean, obviously the delay of the ban is political in nature. By the way, 85% of black smokers smoke menthols. That is crazy. And even the New York Times, it basically admits that this is political. This is their headline. I don't have a subscription to them, so I couldn't read the full article. But they say the proposal had been years in the making in an effort to curb death rates of black smokers targeted by big tobacco. That sentence alone, targeted by big tobacco, you mean giving your customers what they want? If there's demand for your product, of course a company's going to. They're not targeting them. In an election year, the president's worries about support among black voters may have influenced this postponement. May have influenced it? Are you kidding me? Of course it was. Of course this was political. Anything they do is political in nature, especially during an election year. So, what's her title? The speaker, White House spokesperson,
I wanted to go
was
back
asked
to last
about
week.
this.
The administration announced that it was again
Last
delaying.
week.
I know. All the way back a few
All the
days
way
ago.
back.
The administration announced that it was again delaying potential ban on menthol cigarettes.
Yeah.
What do you say to critics that say this decision is prioritizing politics over health?
So he said, what do you say about critics who say that this was political in nature, the fact that it was delayed, basically?
Outcomes, and can you give a timeline for this decision to actually be made?
So, look, Secretary Becerra obviously put out a statement on this, I believe on Friday. And I'll say this, look, the rule garnered a lot of attention, historic attention, and during the public comment period, obviously. And so we got an immense amount of feedback, and this is including various comments and feedback from civil rights organizations and also the criminal justice movement. And we want to be really mindful to that. And so obviously there's more conversations to be had, and we have to really address the concerns of civil rights leaders and also the criminal justice leaders, and also the many Americans who wanted to make sure that their voices were being heard.
What do civil rights leaders have anything to do with cigarettes?
And so it's going to take more time. I don't have a timeline. This is an OMB process. They're going to run through that process. And we just want to make sure that we deal with this significant policy issues that are in front of us right now.
So what happened is, translation, these civil rights leaders came to them and said, listen, 85% of black smokers smoke menthol cigarettes, and if you ban it in an election year, they're more likely to not vote for Biden. I mean, clearly, right? And they just need more time I mean, this has been going on for years. So obviously that's a pretty dumb answer. They just can't admit that.
I wanted to go.
Well, the Detroit Free Press I grabbed this from, but I think this was reposted on another, I didn't write it down, but another major news publication kind of ran this, and they say the menthol cigarette ban was delayed, angering civil rights groups for harm to black communities. Okay, let's dive into this a little bit. On Friday, this was a week or so ago, the Biden administration revealed a further delay of the menthol cigarette ban with no projected timeline in sight. The FDA proposed the ban in 2021, citing that it would lessen the number of new smokers and encourage longtime smokers to quit by taking away the cooling flavor. But when the Biden administration still hadn't met their March 2024 deadline, several civil rights and medical organizations sued the administration. So they sued the administration. By the way, they mentioned civil rights again, which is interesting, but that makes it sound like they sued them because they wanted this ban to go into effect, but they were dragging their feet. And this is hilarious to me. According to the FDA's 2021 proposal, a menthol ban would save an estimated 633,000 lives across the country, including 237,000 African American lives. They're just assuming that if you ban the menthol cigarettes, they'll completely stop smoking. This article gets crazier. Through the decades, the mint-flavored cigarettes have been disproportionately marketed towards black communities, which have subsequently and disproportionately suffered from tobacco use due to the inequities between white and black healthcare. This is so stupid. So they're saying that the menthol cigarettes have been disproportionately marketed towards black communities. Well, yes, because 85% of black smokers use menthol cigarettes, and only 30% or so of white folks use menthol cigarettes. That's what's so crazy to me. And then, by the way, inequities between white and black healthcare. I don't even know what that means. When you go to a hospital, I don't even know what that means. That's just so stupid. A 2021 Detroit Free Press podcast episode dives into just how menthol became a Detroit favorite, touching on multiple topics from how cigarettes were advertised to Detroit's black community in the 50s to the deadly cardiovascular diseases that Detroiters struggle with even today. Well, obviously I wasn't going to sit there and listen to an hour-long podcast or whatever it was, but there's more. So Laurent Huber, executive director of Action on Smoking and Health, said that 789,724 Americans who smoke every day, including almost 200,000 black smokers, are expected to quit once the ban is enacted. These people think that they will just cold turkey just stop smoking just like that. Delusional. They're delusional. Carol Magruder, co-chair of the African American Tobacco Control Leadership Council. What in the heck kind of organization is that? Echoed dismay after the delay. Quote, if the Biden administration believed that Black Lives Matter, they would have ended the sale of menthol-flavored cigarettes. Instead, they appear to be caving to big tobacco, which has racistly targeted our community for decades, she said in a statement. Racistly targeted the community? How is it big tobacco's fault that most of their customers, for whatever reason, are African American. I mean, of course they're going to advertise to their likely customer base, right? Racistly targeted. That is so stupid. So, obviously, I'm a libertarian, right? I don't think that the government should put a ban on anything that a consenting adult wants to put in his body, his or her body. I wouldn't necessarily encourage it, but it certainly shouldn't be illegal. There's no victim here. You have a company who is growing and selling tobacco, and you have an adult who wants to buy it. Because, I mean, obviously, they want to ban cigarettes altogether, and this is just like another, step to get there. Just like they do with gun control and everything else. They start with, bump stocks, and they go down the list trying to get the low-hanging fruit. It's just that this menthol cigarettes is no longer low-hanging fruit. It's pretty high-reaching fruit, if you will. So they may have bitten off more than they can chew with this because they don't want to piss off their potential black voters on an election year. And it is crazy to think that just doing something like that would piss them off to not vote for you. But, hey, people, I don't know, they want their cigarettes. And again, there's no victim in this, so we don't need the government to act like our parents, right? Don't you know that smoking isn't good for you? Listen, these people know that. I know that. Everyone knows that. We don't need them looking out because they don't have our best interests in mind, clearly, with anything. Anyways, let's move on to this prosperity gospel preacher. And I don't know a ton about this guy, but I've seen quite a few of his clips. He's one of these guys that brags about his private jets and his big house and his expensive watch, and he's actually one of the worst. I've seen quite a few clips of him just openly bragging about his wealth. It's pretty shocking. So he has no shame whatsoever in telling his congregation and posting it online saying how big his house is. And honestly, he said there was once, I should have pulled some of these clips, but because they're absolutely wild. So I don't know when this was recorded, but this was going around Twitter this past week. So I'd imagine it was somewhat recent. He addresses this concern that he is always talking about his wealth and how much money he has. And he points to a Bible verse in Psalms, and you've got to listen to this. This is absolutely great.
Let me give you a prime example why I don't care what people think about me, about what I have. Now, look at me. Look at me. I am a...
So the fact that he's addressing this, first of all, he does care a little bit, or he wouldn't be making this video, but...
very blessed man. Me and Kathy are very blessed. I mean, spiritually, physically, and financially. I've had more people criticize me over that jet. They still can't get over it. Criticize me over my house. They didn't pay for it. I paid for it. Do you understand what I say? All these different things.
Well, I mean, I understand you paid for it, but where'd you get that money from? Come on. It's your congregation and folks online or whatever giving you money because you basically tell them, hey, if you give me money, God's going to give you 10 times that money, and, that kind of thing. That is what this guy basically says. So,
but let me tell you why.
Listen.
That's water on a duck's back to me. And I'm going to give you a scripture. And it's Psalms 49.
This is fantastic.
Verse 16. Be not thou afraid when one is made rich, when the glory of his house is increased. Read that and pull that up in the Amplified.
So this is where he messes up. That verse in and of itself doesn't sound too bad. This is where he messes up. He asks his wife, hey, read that in a different version.
16 of Psalms chapter 49, if you can do that. Let me read it while she's getting it. Be not.
And when she pulls this up on her little iPad, take a look at her face right here. Watch this.
Thou afraid. Be not thou afraid when one is made rich, when the glory of his house is
Catch that?
increased.
She was like, ooh. Watch this.
The glory of his house is increased.
And you'll see why.
Read that.
Well, it's Amplified says it, be not afraid when an ungodly one is made rich.
That's true.
When the wealth and glory of his house are increased, and goes on, for when he dies, he will carry nothing away.
yeah,
and
I
his
understand.
glory will not descend after
See,
him.
God don't care.
So you'd be like, all right, well, how's he going to recover from this one? Because it straight up says when an ungodly man comes. So watch how he tries to cover this. Watch this. This is gold.
Ungodly one is made rich.
That's true.
When the wealth and glory of his house are increased, and goes on, for when he dies, he will carry nothing away.
yeah,
and
I
his
understand.
glory will not descend after
See,
him.
God don't care if someone's ungodly to be rich or godly to be rich. It doesn't make any difference whatsoever at all. You see what I'm saying?
No.
So when people criticize me, I just say, well, I'm going to occupy till I come.
Is that not the craziest thing? So let's break this down a little bit. This is the New Living Translation. So this specific verse, this is Psalms 49:16. So don't be dismayed when the wicked grow rich and their homes become ever more splendid. Now, we're going to get this into a little bit of context because the verse starts, and listen, I'm not a theologist or biblical scholar, but I know enough to know how to read the Bible. And the sentence starts with, so don't be dismayed. So it's kind of like, hey, because of the stuff I said before this, here, it's kind of like when you see therefore, I was always taught to say, they used to say, if you see therefore, find out what it's there for. Meaning, read the other verses before it, because that when you see therefore, it's kind of the conclusion. I kind of felt that way with this word so, but it says, so don't be dismayed when the wicked grow rich and their homes become ever more splendid. But let's go back, went up to verse 5. So let's kind of read this in context a little bit. Why should I fear when trouble comes, when enemies surround me? They trust in their wealth and boast of great riches, yet they cannot redeem themselves from death by paying a ransom to God. Redemption does not come so easily, for no one could ever pay enough to live forever and never see the grave. Those who are wise must finally die, just like the foolish and senseless, leaving all of their wealth behind. The grave is their eternal home, where they will stay forever. But their fame will not last. They will die, just like animals. This is the fate of fools, though they are remembered as being wise. Like sheep, they are led to the grave, where death will be their shepherd. In the morning, the godly will rule over them. Their bodies will rot in the grave, far from their grand estates. But as for me, God will redeem my life. He will snatch me from the power of the grave. And this is his verse. So don't be dismayed when the wicked grow rich and their homes become ever more splendid. For when they die, they will take nothing with them. Their wealth will not follow them into the grave. In this life, they consider themselves fortunate and are applauded for their success. But they will die, like all before them, and never again see the light of day. People who boast of their wealth don't understand. They will die, just like animals. Oof! Oof! He's the one that chose this verse. He chose this verse 16 verse to say that there's nothing wrong about boasting of your wealth. And when you read this chapter, I mean, it is clear as day saying they can't take their wealth with them. People who boast of their wealth don't understand. They will die just like animals. I mean, he tried to save that. He tried to save it and was like, "That's true. That's true. See, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter." But yeah, clearly this guy did not read the context of that verse. But does it really surprise you? This guy doesn't read the Bible. He looks for verses that would satisfy his lust for power, wealth, success, earthly things in order to justify his motives, right? I mean, that's really what he's doing. And that's what he's been doing well at it, admittedly. But again, the author of this psalm says, "Don't be dismayed by them when they grow rich and their homes become ever more splendid." I should have attached a picture of this guy's house. I mean, it's unbelievably huge. "For when they die, they will take nothing with them. Their wealth will not follow them into the grave, and they will die just like animals." I mean, I don't have hate in my heart. I think this guy is evil, but everyone can turn around. Even this guy, who's a thief, in my opinion, a con man, and honestly working for our enemy, the devil himself. That's really what he's doing. His entire ministry is rotten to the core. But there is hope for him. He needs to repent and actually read the Bible and pray and change his ways. Maybe he will. Maybe he will, and I pray that he does. But anyways, I got a couple more things here. On a related note, there is I guess he's a famous like atheist kind of guy. Richard Dawkins was on apparently a podcast or somewhere in Britain. Got to listen to what he says here, and then the reaction from kind of the right wing crowd. Listen to this, and it's on a very kind of related note to what I was just talking about. Listen to this.
Well, I must say I was slightly horrified to hear that Ramadan is being promoted instead. I do think that we are culturally a Christian country. I call myself a cultural Christian. I'm not a believer, but there's a distinction between being a believing Christian and being a cultural Christian. And so, I love hymns and Christmas carols, and I sort of feel at home in the Christian ethos. I feel that we are a Christian country in that sense. It's true that statistically the number of people who actually believe in Christianity is going down, and I'm happy with that. But I would not be happy if, for example, we lost all our cathedrals and our beautiful parish churches. So I count myself a cultural Christian. I think it wouldn't matter if we substituted any alternative religion. That would be truly dreadful.
Well, which brings me to my supplementary point, which is that, as we know, church attendance is plummeting, but the erection of mosques across Europe, I think 6,000 are under construction, and there are many more,
wow.
Are being planned. So
wow.
do you regard that as a problem? Do you think that matters?
Yes, I do, really. I mean, I have to choose my words carefully. I mean, if I had to choose between Christianity and Islam, I choose Christianity every single time. I mean, it seems to me to be a fundamentally decent religion in a way that I think Islam is not.
I think you're going to have to explain why you say that, Professor Dawkins.
Let me finish this before.
Why is Islam
Well, the way
fundamentally not decent like Christianity?
Yes, I mean the way women are treated. I mean, Christianity is not great about that. It's had its problems with female vicars and female bishops and things, but there's an active hostility to women, which is promoted, I think, by the holy books of Islam. I'm not talking about individual Muslims, who of course are quite different, but the doctrines of Islam, the Hadith and the Quran, is fundamentally hostile to women, hostile to gays. And I find that I like to live in a culturally Christian country, although I do not believe a single word of the Christian faith.
So, boy, that's interesting, right? So, on the one hand, he said he's happy that there's a decline in Christianity and church-going Christians, but he enjoys and prefers living in a Christian society. That's not irrational, I think, for a lot of reasons. If there's a Christian society, as I see it, would be largely peaceful, forgiving, just, and, these kinds of things. While he simultaneously is saying, hey, I hate Christians, I hate God, where he doesn't believe God exists. And the overwhelming reaction from a lot of right-wing folks, there's this guy, Aaron McIntyre, and he kind of summed it up. Again, this was from, about a month ago. He says, nothing more detestable than these clowns lamenting the loss of the culture they destroyed while still pretending they're morally superior to the people who warned them every step of the way. And I gotta say, I understand where he's coming from with that, and I agree with it. And it is detestable that these clowns. I agree with his the gist of what he's saying. However, there is a part of me, just like I said, Jesse Duplantis can change and can turn around. I mean, maybe this is one of those things that this guy late in life is realizing as he's looking around at the culture and saying, you know what? Maybe I took for granted the Christian culture we were living in, and start asking questions saying, hey, why is it that a largely Christian culture has these things that I desire, like I said, love, patience, just, fairness, these kind of things that at least I would say are kind of Christian in nature. What is it about those Christians that brings about this culture that I like and enjoy? And so maybe he's kind of kicking these things around. And even someone who spent their entire life hating God, despising Christians, despising Christianity, disparaging God, disparaging Christianity, there's still hope for even this guy, for even this, God-hating atheist. These things take time. When people's worldview when they start questioning their kind of worldview, they don't change their mind overnight. Sometimes this is a process that takes months, maybe years. So I would like to be a little, patient and loving towards him as a Christian, and encourage him to ask that question. Well, why is that? What is it about Christians that's different? I think this is largely why Christians, we need to be Christ-like, because our example leads others to ask those questions. Say, what is it about this person, why are they happy? Why do they have joy? Why do they have peace? I want that, you know? So maybe these are questions he's asking. I don't know. But the flesh side of me agrees with Aaron McIntyre and says this guy's a clown who is pretending he's morally superior to the people that warn him every step of the way. So I understand that. And I agree with that, the gut instinct. But again, I would just say, hey, we should be patient and loving towards everyone. We're taught to even love our enemies. I would consider that guy an enemy. He's an enemy of, he's antithetical to everything I believe in, right? But again, everyone has the opportunity to change. And anyways, Aaron McIntyre is an interesting follow on Twitter. Whenever there's a hot button topic going on, he has a way of kind of putting it in a larger context. There was another, this was something I think that was shared by the, Joe Biden's Twitter handle, I believe. If not, it was like a Democrat PAC or something like that. But they talked about how much cash was on hand between Biden or Team Biden, Harris, and Trump. So they had $100 million more than Trump. And they're saying, hey, we spent our money on, we have over 100 battleground state offices open. We've sent 2 million texts and 385,000 calls to voters. We've paid 20,000 volunteers, whatever, right? And what's Trump spending his little bit of money on? Well, legal fees, fake golf trophies, so they're like making fun of him. And then Aaron McIntyre had a tweet that said, our political opponent has less money because we weaponize the legal system. Is an interesting way to restore faith in democracy. Which is exactly true. I mean, obviously, they're using every opportunity they can to tie Trump up in court, drain him financially, prevent him from getting out and talking to people, and trying to ruin his life in every way possible. And so anyways, that is basically all I've got. I'm going to end this on a tweet I saw actually today from Jeff Dice, who was the former, I don't know what he was, president of the Mises Institute. And he references this Roman philosopher who, honestly, I don't know much about Roman philosophers, but this was kind of his modern day take on what he thinks this philosopher would have said, and I find it interesting. So let's read this. First and foremost, think before you speak. Oh, this is basically on the social media trap is what he's saying. First and foremost, think before you speak to make sure you are speaking with good purpose. Glib talk disrespects others. Breezy self-disclosure disrespects yourself. So many people feel compelled to give voice to any passing feeling, thought, or impression they have. They randomly dump the contents of their minds without regard to the consequences. This is practically and morally dangerous. If we babble about every idea that occurs to us, big and small, we can easily fritter away in the trivial currents of mindless talk ideas that have true merit. Unchecked speech is like a vehicle wildly lurching out of control and destined for a ditch. And this got me thinking, because I think this often, that it is shocking to me how freely and openly people just blurt out every thought that comes to them, and they post it on social media for the world to see. I mean, people will scream at their phone and post a video. They'll cry. They'll be extremely emotional, flying off the handle, saying lots of really dumb stuff. And, that's just kind of goes against my nature. I mean, I hardly ever tweet. In fact, so many times I've started to type something on Twitter and then I delete it. Like, do I really need to tweet that? Do I really need to post that to Facebook? I do that so often. So that voice in my head that says, do you really need, like, it's probably overcompensating because I never post anything. So yeah, anyways, this is an interesting world we live in. I feel like he just described Twitter to a T. It's just when you go on Twitter, or X now, I guess, but it is nothing but people just openly typing whatever pops in their mind. It's not all of that. As I mentioned, Jeff Dice, Aaron McIntyre does a good job of kind of thinking a little bit before they tweet every little thing. But I would just encourage folks to pause a second and say, does the world really need to see this? Now, I love memes and everything, and there's nothing wrong with sharing memes and stuff, and I get all that. But, yeah, I don't know. It's always a good idea to take a second and just make sure that what you're saying is true and helpful, and yeah. So anyways, that's all I got. I hope you found that interesting. I know I did. This is why I'm talking about it. But yeah, if you enjoyed this, give it a like, and I will be back next Sunday, just kind of going through what I find interesting as it relates to Christianity, politics, and that sort of thing. Thanks, guys. Have a good week. Bye.